Hello and welcome to Learn With Me Hydrasynth. This is episode 21, Sound Design Sequenced Plucks. So first, what is Learn With Me? Well, Learn With Me is a series where you follow my end-to-end process learning to get the best out of a synthesizer. In this case, it is the ASM Sound Machine's Hydrasynth Explorer. It is a well-built, compact, fully digital synthesizer in a subtractive style, providing a polyphonic Aftertouch mini key keyboard. So far I've talked about everything about the synthesizer, from its build through the entire signal path and all of the other features, and we've moved on to designing some sounds for this synthesizer. We've gone through a few types, and today we shall do another. So first let me get in a nit patch and tell you what we're doing today. One of the interesting features of this synthesizer are these stepped LFOs. So what I would like to use is those stepped LFOs along with all of the oscillators to create a moving sequence. But in general, I don't like these sequence patches. The main reason I don't like them is music theory. What I mean by that is if you play a note and it plays that note only, or that note plus octaves either way, we know those octave notes will be in the scale. If it plays that note and a fifth above or a fourth below, which are symmetric intervals, you will find that for all of the root notes in a 7-note scale, it will play a note in key, and if you play the one where the fifth isn't in scale, then it will play an out of note. So if I'm playing in C major, C's fifth is in, D's fifth is in, E's fifth is in, F's fifth is in, G's fifth is in, A's fifth is in, but B's fifth is not in key. And once you move, fourth is also symmetric, so for fourths, you have all the fourths in apart from the fourth of F, which is B flat, which is not, again, in key. So, first things first. I am not going to be playing a melody here. I am only going to be using the note that I play and octaves. With that out of the way, let's start getting this set up. So I think I'm going to have them play a higher line, a mid line, and a low line. So let's say oscillator 1 is going to play the low line, an octave down. Oscillator 2 will play on pitch. Oscillator 3 will play an octave above. So these are where the pitches that I set in the LFOs are going to be moving from. So you can imagine when the high one moves down an octave, it will hit the note that the mid one is playing, and when the low one goes up an octave, it will hit the note that the mid one is playing as well. So first, let's get to this. So type of LFO, the waveform is going to be stepped. I'm going to use BPM syncing, and I'm also going to set the trigger mode to single. This will mean that the LFOs will reset when I play, but if I add or remove notes, those will not play in a different phase. This may be interesting for some purposes, but I would like a more fixed rhythmic structure here. I'm also going to turn on BPM sync because this is a convenient way of getting the same timing across multiple oscillators. Multiple LFOs and multiple events that are occurring. And I will probably also use BPM sync when setting the envelopes, so we have a sort of relationship going on between these two things. Now, I need to figure out how many steps I'd like these sequences to have. I could just pick a number and they could all have the same number, but I think it might be interesting if they played at different rates and they had different numbers of steps. So if, let's say, LFO 3 is going to correspond to oscillator 1, the lowest pitch, let's say this is going to be the slowest. So quarter notes might be slow enough for the slowest, and as it's the slowest, I'd like it to have the fewest number of steps. So first I'm going to turn on semitone lock, and let's say this is going to be a sequence of 5 steps. And then I'm going to go up in prime numbers, just so as they're kind of multiples across. The lowest common multiple is very high, so it will repeat a long time in the future. So semitone lock is on. Now, with all of this in place for this LFO, what I can do is hold save, and hold save again. So what that's done is that's copied everything about the LFO to all of these LFOs. So that's convenient for me. LFO4, I want it faster. So let's go to dotted eighths, and LFO5 is going to go faster, which can be eighths. So we've got eighths, dotted eighths, quarter notes. The quarter notes, I made the sequence 5 steps. The dotted eighth, I will put this up to 7 steps, and the eighths will go up to 11 steps. So I'm not going to write a complicated melody, especially because I'm only going to use unison octave up, octave down. So for each one, I'm going to have a fixed pattern, either falling, rising, or ping pong middle, ping pong middle. So let's just put that in place. So this, how many steps have I got? Okay, so let's start on this one, which has the fewest number of steps, and this can be falling. So we're going to go plus 0, minus, plus 0. So this is a falling slope. This one is then going to be a rising slope. Note that I haven't listened to this yet because, in a sense, we can always tweak this afterwards, but I need something in place to work with. So that's a rising shape. It should be on 0 to 12. So now we have a falling shape, a rising shape, and this one is going to be a ping pong sort of shape. So I think I'm going to go maybe 0 plus minus, 0 minus plus, just for some variation. So 0 plus minus, 0 minus plus, 0 plus minus, 0 minus. Okay, so now we have these LFO shapes going. Now we'd like to send these to the pitches of these oscillators. So how are we going to do that? We're going to press this and then this, next slot, this and then this, next slot, this and then this. When you're doing them pitched, you have to set the depth to 128, and then the semitone locking that I put in place on the sequences will correspond to true pitch. So I'm going to do all of those. And for now, I'm just going to turn them all up in the mixer so we can hear them. Maybe a little slower than that. Okay, I like that. So what I might do is I might have a less timbrally complex wave in the higher pitch and getting more timbrally complex as we get to lower. So oscillator 1 is the lowest pitch. It's a saw wave that's harmonically rich. I'm going to change oscillator 2 to triangle saw, and oscillator 3 I will change to triangle. So that, for me, is because the higher pitch tends to be more present. So I'm going to put more harmonics in the lower pitch and less as we go up that scale. So I think that's working. Now what we will do is get the envelopes in play. So I'm going to have envelope 3 correspond to LFO 3. So first thing, I'm going to use BPM syncing here. I want to pluck, so I'm going to have no attack, no sustain. And this is quarter beats. So let's put this up. So that's a quarter. And it could be a dotted eighth long, and I'm going to set the release to be the same time as that. So that means that whether I release the key or not, it will be playing the same sort of tempo there. Another thing that it might be worth doing is turning on free running, which means that even when I release the notes, the LFO of the envelope will keep playing. So as if I want the release to be longer, that might work. And I might also, actually, I probably don't need reset. So what reset means is when the envelope is triggered, it means that it will return to a 0 value before proceeding. So imagine we had the attack, it was decaying, and it reset that. It will jump up instantaneously. Now, if I had a non-zero attack, then what would happen is we'd have the attack phase, we'd have the decay phase, And then if we don't have reset, the attack will proceed from here. If we do have reset, it will drop down and then the attack will proceed. So in this case, let's say reset is off, but I'm probably not going to adjust this parameter. I think that's fine, but it's probably worth... I'm just going to copy that and then we can figure it out afterwards. Oh, actually, no, one more thing. I'm going to change it from being triggered with note on to being triggered by LFO3, and then these other two will be correspondingly triggered. So now I'm going to copy them. So I now have 3 identical envelopes, but these other envelopes, I want them to be shorter. So this is going to be, let's say, 8th. This can be dotted 16th. So we have 3 different lengths of envelope here. And now we can change the triggering. So this is going to be triggered by LFO4. This is going to be triggered by LFO5. So now we have a set of envelopes that are going to be triggered in response. So I hope you can see that as this moves on, this flashes. So now I want that to envelope the sound for us. So to do that, I'm going to turn the mixer level for all the oscillators down, and then I'm going to use the mod matrix to envelope them up. So all the oscillators down, we've got no sound. What are we going to do? Envelope 3 to the mixer, envelope 4 to the mixer, envelope 5 to the mixer. So envelope 3 is going to modulate oscillator 1 level. This is going to be oscillator 2 level. This is going to be oscillator 3 level. So notice as I add additional notes, the timing is not out of phase. If, I'll just do it as an example, I change these to poly, we'll get something different. Not to say that it's bad. So the timing of each one will reset as I play a different note, but that was not my intention here, so... So I think I'd like to have a little bit of shape going on here. Already sounding pretty good, really. I'm quite happy with how that's going. I think what I will do is maybe add a little velocity sensitivity and add a little filter motion to go along with this. What I might do with the filter, though, is I might make the filter a plucky shape. So the shortest of these plucks is dotted 16ths happening at 8ths. So I may make this one respond or advance at the same rate as that, or maybe even quicker. Just as an experiment then, I'm going to copy this LFO over here, and I'm going to have it run at 16ths. So this LFO now is running relatively rapidly. The shape is currently stepped. I'm probably not going to use it, but I'm going to change this to a sine wave just so as it's consistent with the others. It's consistent as sort of a shape that I might want to move the filters with. But what I really want to do is I want to have this envelope be reset by LFO1. So this is now resetting, but you can't see it being reset because the shape of it is not a very suitable shape for this. So what I'll do then is I'll go to BPM sync again. This is happening in 16ths. So let's set a length here. Let's see, maybe dotted 30 seconds. Maybe I'll do 16ths actually. I think that might be interesting. So if I have this be 16ths long, then as soon as it resets, it's going to pop back up to its previous value. So, did I set that to be reset by LFO1? Yes. So what I will now do is I will close filter 1 a bit. I'll close it a lot to start with, and I'll have it. It almost sounds like an echo now because it's happening on 16ths. At the moment, I think that's too extreme, so I'm going to open the filter. I would like this to be a little slower as well. Interesting. See how resonance sounds. Sounding good. Let's see if there's anything interesting to do with the other the other filter. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to turn up some resonance and sweep it up. So maybe I'll close it. So it just starts stealing a little bit of the harmonics to the bottom end. I'm going to have the envelope open it a little. Turn the resonance down. Sounding interesting. So finally what I might do is add a small amount of ring mod and noise in here. These are only going to be affected by the filter envelope and the amplitude envelope. So I'm going to have these quiet, but that is perfectly okay. So I'm going to solo just so I can hear it. Maybe I'll ring mod the highest pitch against the lowest pitch. So I'm going to turn it all the way down and turn it up so it's just a little noise in the background. Now let's solo the noise. I think I like the brown noise here. Let's have that quiet. Now unsolo. I like the way that's sounding. I think I might experiment panning the oscillators out a little bit. So I feel like the lowest pitch one, I probably want to pan out the least. So let's say I'm going to pan this out -10. That can go out +20, that's the middle pitch, and the highest one can go out -30. And then I might place the noise and the ring mod something like 0 and +10. Sounds good. And finally, let's experiment with this. Okay, a little bit more lively, I would say. So now I've got the voices panning randomly. Sounds interesting, and for tempo I think I'm going to turn it a little lower again. Notice that I used the edit mode here, a little too slow. I think that works. So let's try a little higher up. So I'm going to turn filter tracking down a little here. And add some velocity sensitivity. Like that. So let's try playing the middle octave lightly, heavily. I'm going to make the stereo panning a little bit narrower. Sometimes it goes a little too wide when there's only one note playing. Sounding good. So now I'll go into adding some effects. Let's see how much time I have, but I think I'm not going to have time to fully refine all of the parameters. One of the things I would probably like to do with this is add some aftertouch expression and probably some more velocity expression, but we'll see how much time we've got, because I think the effects are going to add a lot here. Sounding interesting, just a little bit more motion, a little bit stereo motion there. Now let's go for a panning delay, because I have these placed fairly centrally, so I think the ping pong's going to add some interesting width. So let's go tempo synced again, and we know that our fastest movement is these 16ths. So I'm going to try these 8th triplets. These 16th triplets. So you can hear that these delays are long, but I'm going to turn the wet dry down. But first I'm going to adjust the tone. So the feedback tone or feed tone affects how much of this wet tone effect is applied for the feedback loop. So let's play the 8th triplet, so that's what we're going for. Sounding good, so let's go for some reverb here. I usually like the hall, be a fairly big hall. Let's first set this 100% wet, and let's listen to the tone. Since I made the delay quite dark, I'm going to try and make this a bit brighter. So that will allow the higher pitches to ring out a little longer than the lower. I want quite a long sort of smear going on here. So you can imagine that if I wasn't just using these octaves, when I'm playing those chords, I could be bringing in a lot of inharmonious sounds, which may be acceptable for what you're doing and it may make sense. but is not necessarily what you want. So when we stick to these octaves, we know that the resulting thing that we play will remain in the key that we're playing it. So if I play E flat major, if I play, sorry, E flat minor, if I play G major, if I play D major, these will be harmonious. So I think that's pretty important. I think maybe one more effect would make sense. I liked the motion that we got from the phaser. I think I might bring in a chorus at the end. It's interesting to put chorus after the reverb because the reverb tail will also be chorus. So I may have the wet dry quite low, but let's just try it out. I like that. So I'm just going to bring it up until I really start to feel it. You may think, oh, there might be some interesting things to do here using the arpeggiator with this. Probably not as interesting as you might imagine, because at the moment I have these being reset automatically. Now, if I didn't have these being reset and I had these running in free time, then if I had the LFO turned on and I had it, if I had the arpeggiator turned on and I had it in one of the slower divisions, then you could hear these melodies exploring the keyboard. But for now, I don't think that really makes sense with the way that this is set up, and you get something probably fairly boring that way. But by all means, experiment as you wish. See if I have time to add something else. Maybe I'll make, because I haven't even used the mod matrix, have I? Oh, I have used the mod matrix. But anyway, I'm going to maybe have a little drive come in with a higher velocity, or actually, let's have a bit of drive come in and open the filter cutoff a little bit with Aftertouch. I think that's going to be fun. So first, let me close filter 1 a little. So it's a little bit, yeah, it's not quite as bright as you might want it to be, and then we're going to bring that brightness in with the Aftertouch. So I'm going to, as I've mentioned before, use LFO 5 for this because that's high up the number of mod sources. So two of them, but I don't actually want LFO 5. What I want is poly Aftertouch. The second one, the first one was going to be cut off, the second one was going to be drive. So I'm going to just press this and hold a note down. So this is going to be full Aftertouch value. Okay, so now I have an expression that I can use, and I think that's all I'm going to do for today. I'll just play a little bit. Let's play in a key we haven't played before. Okay, so hopefully that's illustrated a way that you can use these step LFOs not just for putting a melodic sequence in place, but for putting a sequence in place that you can still play. I went for something that's, well, both a polymeter and a polyrhythm here. I went for a very formulaic approach to picking the notes that are played here. You could go for some more randomization if you wanted, which may be interesting. I haven't really done very much in the way of velocity expression. I think this would suit a mod wheel expression or maybe some macro expressions quite nicely, so that's something that you might want to look into. Possibly using the mutants, but my gut feeling is that I wouldn't really use the mutants here. Partly because all three voices are supposed to be, even though they're not technically separate voices, I'm treating them as three separate voices with a paraphonic filter. There are no mutants on oscillator 3, so I don't have parity. I can't have a similar effect applied to all of them. But even without those things in place, I think we have something which is fairly interesting, something which is quite easy to play and quite fun to play. In any case, I probably have another one or two of these sound design videos to go, but we are coming towards the end of this series. So I'd like to say thank you for taking the time and watching the series with me. I'd like to say specifically, thank you very much for watching today, and goodbye.